Hello and welcome to NPTEL Online Teaching. Myself, Professor Shamsul Hayat from Aligarh Muslim University, and my teaching assistant, Samin Zaidi, a PhD scholar. Today, we will explore different style of gardens, starting with a closer look at formal style gardens. Let's begin today's class. In our last video lecture, we studied briefly about the three garden styles: formal, informal, that is cottage, and wild gardens, each showcasing unique aesthetic preferences and design principles. Now we will delve into each type, starting with today's focus on formal style gardens in details. Coming to the introductory part, formal gardens linked with classical or traditional design have been favored across history and are common in grand estates, public areas, and formal residences. Their formality imparts a feeling of elegance and timeless beauty. We will elaborate on four different styles of formal style gardens, that is Mughal style garden, Persian style garden, Italian style garden, and French style gardens. The key feature of formal style gardens includes, that is symmetry, means mirrored elements along a central axis emphasize symmetry. The next one is geometric shapes, where it will be squares, rectangles, circles, and straight lines bring order. Then the next one is defined borders. A clear borders with hedges or walls outline distinct garden areas. Then focal points. Strategically place statues or fountain enhance the design. Then we have the structural planting, that it means plants arranged in a defined patterns showcase organization. Then we have a symmetrical planting. It means balanced planting on each side of a central axis create order. Then we have path, straight or curved, stone or brick path add formality to the design. The initial example of formal style garden is basically represented by Mughal style gardens. Mughal gardens in India trace their origins to the reign of Mughal emperors and draw inspiration from the garden styles of Central Asia and Persia. Babur, the inaugural Mughal ruler in between 1494 to 1531, introduced this garden style to India and successive rulers including Akbar, Jahangir, Noor Jahan, Shah Jahan and Aurangzeb played roles in advancing Mughal gardens. These gardens showcase a unique Mughal design that became synonymous with their architectural and landscaping accomplishment. Basically, the Mughal style gardens feature a distinctive layout that considers site and design. The Mughals preferred locations on hill slopes or along with rivers for their gardens, which were commonly rectangular or square in shape. The design also integrated architectural elements as crucial components. In terms of walls and gates, Mughal gardens served dual purposes, offering both pleasure and defense. They were enclosed by high walls featuring imposing wooden gates for security, adorned with iron nails and spikes to enhance protection. These walls not only provided shelter from enemies but also offered relief from hot winds. Overall, the gardens served as tranquil retreats for emperors and their companions. Concerning terraces, the Mughals originating from hilly regions had a pronounced fondness for incorporating terraces into their garden. These gardens were frequently situated near hill slopes or included artificial terraces in Punjab. Reflecting Islamic influence, some gardens featured 8 terraces symbolizing divisions in paradise. Alternatively, they could have been terraces representing the 7 planets. Incorporating nahar or running water, the Mughals embraced Persian water features in their gardens, constructing canals and tanks. The use of blue-tiled canals created an illusion of depth with water manipulated for artificial falls. Fountains adorned the water canals and evening lamps were lit to enhance reflections. The Muslim faith influenced this fascination with water, considering it a symbol of paradise. Gardens situated on hill slopes were chosen to access running rivulets or springs as water sources. In the hot plains, Mughals utilize water not only for its symbolism but also for its cooling effect in the garden landscapes. The next layout is the baradari. That a baradari is a stone and masonry arbor featuring a solid roof and an elevated seating platform. Usually, it is equipped with 12 or more doors on all sides, designed for emperors to observe performances by dancing girls while ensuring a free flow of air. Mughal gardens were often constructed around tombs or monuments such as the Taj Mahal or Akbar's tomb at Sikandra. The gardens were deemed most impressive when intricately linked with a substantial and notable structure. Finally, in terms of trees and flowers, the Mughals made thoughtful choices based on symbolic significance. For instance, fruit trees were selected to symbolize life and youth, while cypress represented themes of death and eternity. Mughal gardens showed a preference for spring flowering trees and flowers, with seasonal flower beds arranged geometrically along water canals or in proximity to main structures. Among their favored flowers were the rose, jasmine, carnation, hollyhock, delphinium, and others. Here are some examples of Mughal style garden, such as Shalimar Garden, Lahore, Pakistan; Nishad Garden, Srinagar, India; Chashmashahi, Srinagar, India; Pinjore Garden, Patiala, India; Bagh-e-Babar, Kabul, Afghanistan; Lal Bagh Fort, Bangladesh; Akbar's Tomb, Agra, India; Khusru Bagh, Prayagraj, India; Mehtab Bagh, Agra, India; Hazuri Bagh, Pakistan. Continuing with our exploration of formal style gardens, let's move on to Persian gardens. In Persian literature, the word gardens, pardis, derives from the word paradisa, which literally means walled garden, and it has been summed up as a luminous and perfumed place, populated by a number of angelical and beautiful creatures. The purpose of designing gardens in Persia was not only limited to providing green spaces for the inhabitants, but also creating the opportunity for further interaction between the human and nature, as well as creating various ranges of functions and promoting Persian culture via various design elements. The Persian garden style, rooted in ancient traditions and influenced by heavenly concepts, adhere to strict formality, adhere to strict formality and symmetry. Crafted materials like masonry and carved marble were integral to Persian gardens. These gardens incorporated terracing on hill slopes and the creation of straight watercourses by tapping natural springs or redirecting water sources. A pivotal element in Persian garden design was the use of nahars or flowing canals, embodying the idea of a paradise with cooling water flows. Trees were carefully chosen, with fruit trees symbolizing life and cypress representing theme of death and eternity. Regarding the essential characteristics of Persian style gardens, the first is their enclosed nature. One of the unique features of Persian garden is being fenced or walled around its perimeter. As you can see in the image, where an aerial of Finn garden is shown, the function of these walls was not only to create a boundary but also to act as an interface between the dry, hot outer area and the green, shady and semi-paradise inner area. Persian garden follow a hierarchical design for protection and in alignment with Islamic architectural principles. In order to protect the garden from outside and in line with the principle of introversion in Islamic architecture, entering the garden and the pathway to the pavilion has been designed with an accurate hierarchy. Similar to traditional houses, mosques and schools, the entrance of the garden occurs from a completely public area to a semi-public one and then to the private. Therefore, for entering the garden, you need to pass a hierarchy of spaces from the lintel into an octagonal space called hashti. And then you can see the main axis and the pavilion. The water streams usually define the path to edifice. This principle can also be found in the height, color and size of garden components. The next one is symmetry, which is a classical aesthetic and inseparable design principle in Persian garden. Various aspects of symmetry can be found in the design of middle open spaces, palaces, streams, and irrigation network, and the type and place of planting vegetation and trees, especially along the garden axis. However, within this apparent symmetry, the vegetation provides a slight eye-catching asymmetry. In spite of the order of the planting system of the garden, plants cannot equally grow and they will differ with each other. In this sense, the garden is a symmetrical container which embraces the symmetry of its containerized natural elements. Fourth one is centrality. In Persian gardens, the principles of centrality is mostly based on the placement of the pavilion as a focal point located at the intersection of the garden's main axis. The centrality has been mostly intensified with the placement of the axis amplifying the symmetry, the location of the pavilion as a focal point and a central space, the row of planted tall trees creating a surrounded pathway in the center and contrasting the color of the building materials with the landscape. The next one is rhythm and harmony. Harmony had been used in different forms, that is, in the regulation and design of gardens. Elements such as the type and location of the vegetation, replicating the geometrical shapes between the natural and architectural elements, use of fountains and ponds, flooring, and design of the walls around the gardens. Moreover, the integration of a vertical linear system of trees and horizontal linear system of waterways and walkways provides a rhythm and harmony in the appearance of gardens. Although the simplicity of gardens structures unifies the space holistically, it contains diverse spaces with simple geometrical shapes, diverse plants and vegetation, even diverse forms of presenting water. Despite all of these diverse and independent components, gardens' principles such as symmetry and centrality have created a unified and united space. All the elements function separately to pursue the purpose of the garden, developed the interaction between the human and the nature. Finally, Persian gardens feature naturalism. Unlike European gardens, the philosophy and concept of Persian gardens do not speak to impose order into the landscape, rather trying to arrange the components in their spatial order. Maintaining an open perspective in gardens has been a principle of planting and structuring. Therefore, the plant space of pavilion along the main longitudinal axis has been usually dedicated to an open and stretched space which contains short vegetation or a large pool to avoid blocking the main view of the garden. The image given is the Finn garden and it clearly showing the naturalism. Here is the overview of the typical layout element found in the Persian garden. The layout of Persian gardens reflects a deep connection with nature and appreciation for geometric aesthetics and a desire to create harmonious outdoor spaces that engage all the senses. The presence of water in Persian garden has a dual application, a functional application of irrigation besides an ornamental and aesthetic purpose. The streams usually had a sufficient slope to enable the irrigation system required for the garden. The water coming for distances into the water channels had a significant impact on the design of gardens. Other than water channels, the front space of the pavilion was usually dedicated to a span or dedicated to a pond or large pool to reflect the water feature. The water feature positioned in front of the water feature positioned in front of pavilion contributes both practice and symbolic elements to the Gavasant design. Usually, the terrace has a lintel, sometime in the form of a building or vivo point. The presence or the entrance is usually located close to one of the axes which connected to the entrance to the edicule. The lintel building would also be used as a reception space for guests alongside defining the entrance. In some gardens, such as Finn, the entrance building had a latticed wall which could not let the glimpses of inside, and the entrance was located on the minor axis. The streets of footpath network of Persian gardens were always perpendicular, straight lines, and consistent with the garden axis. The intersection of these main footsteps usually defines the placement of the pavilion and pool, which were located on the main longitudinal axis of the garden. These straight network, surrounded by tall trees, were able to provide a desirable perspective, defining the path from the entrance to the pavilion. These networks also facilitated the access to the plots of vegetation. Pavilion to Persian gardens are extroverted structures usually located at the intersection of axes with several viewpoints to the gardens. Pavilions are the edifices where the residents or visitors live in and enjoy the gardens. There is usually a pathway guiding the user from the entrance to the pavilion. The location of the pavilions could vary in different gardens. It could be located in the center of the garden, or mostly it appeared in 1/3 of the longitudinal axis, but it was always located at the intersection of the axis. These are the some representative of Persian style garden, that is Bagh-e-Aram, Shiraz, Iran; Chehel Santon Garden, Isfahan, Iran; Ancient Garden of Pasargade, Shiraz, Iran; Daulatabad, Yazd, Iran; Bagh-e-Shazdeh, Kerman Province, Iran; Fin Garden, Kashan, Iran. In this lecture, we have discussed about Mughal and Persian style garden. Thank you.